Hello and welcome to this special session for Aries Kudo developers. I'm Martin Day from AEC Magazine and I run NXT Next Build and Next Dev in the UK. I've been covering BIM for about 35 years and drawings and all that sort of stuff. And it's really exciting to be here to introduce this generation of a Greybook technology, which I'm particularly interested in because automation is finally here. I would like to now hand over to Robert, who's going to give his presentation.
Thank you, Martin, for the introduction. So let me start with going over, what does Aries Kudo look like for developers? What do we bring to the table before we lead into a case study? So just as a recap, Aries Kudo is a fully blown web-based CAD system, natively running DWG with a whole set of features. That is a great end user product, but we make this available to developers fully. So just very high level, right? We have a ribbon interface here. We have over 300 of the most common CAD features. You can work with layers, hatches, gradients, dimensions, sheets, and viewports. You can print a PDF, all the things you would expect from a desktop CAD experience, but running natively in the browser, right? It doesn't even stop there, right? We'll keep going. We have Xrep management. You can bring in raster files. You can edit tables, bring in import and export PDF, DGN, do drawing compare. You can comment. You can do 3D stuff. So really, it's fully featured. It's not a viewer, right? It is a full editing product. And we bring that to the table to our developer partners. Right? The same thing we do on desktop, we are now doing in the cloud. And so let's see a quick video. It's actually something we were going to post on the website after the conference, just highlighting the key aspects of what it means for us to provide a developer product here. It's fully customizable, right? You can deploy it anywhere it makes sense, and it runs in a browser, right? And so, as you can see here, right, all the capabilities in the system are there for you to turn off. It's not like you have to bring them yourself, right? We bring them and you turn them off if you don't need them, or you customize it to your needs, right? You can customize this using development languages that you're familiar with on desktop, but also with web native integration modes. You could skin this to however you want it to be, right? It doesn't need to be an Aries Kudo brand. It could be your own brand. We're completely silent. And then you could customize it with APIs, whether that's Lisp, which, so as Martin said, 35 years in the industry, Lisp was even older. And so there's a lot of a legacy functionality in the field, and we want to help you bring that to the cloud, right? And we have different ways you can run this, right? We can all give you servers. You can run it yourself, right? Or you can run it on premise even. And I'm going to now spend the next couple of minutes just diving into each of these aspects briefly. So the key things for us, native DWG, we're not asking you to convert data into another format. It allows us to edit directly without having to do any kind of intermediate steps. We'll show you examples of customization, how technically we're integrating the local developer experience, how you can deploy this, and we'll talk very briefly at the end about business models here, right? So natively, we're running internally DWG 2018, right, the latest format, but you can go back or bring in any format version that you have available. We even support certain custom objects in here, and if you need some other ones, we're happy to have a conversation with you. But the really cool thing is this customization of the end user interface, because this is where we really want to allow you to focus a solution to your customers without needing to overwhelm them with a full CAD interface, right? So this is an example. TechNow is a partner of ours that has an online manufacturing system for laser cutting, right? And so while as a person uploads a design, they're able to see what will be the cost of producing that and can even tweak the design with very simple means to optimize cost and fidelity of the output, right? And you could see here is just the CAD view plus a very simple toolbar with dedicated features that they require, right? No panels, nothing here. The second example is sort of the opposite end of the spectrum is Onshape, right? Onshape has been a partner of ours for over the last 10 years, and we work very closely together. And the underlying technology that you see here for the drawings component in Onshape is Aries Kudo. but it's heavily customized, right? So it's its own visual language. It has this top toolbar at the top, a lot of custom features specific to Onshape drawings, and fully hosted within the Onshape domain, right? And this has been in production for over 10 years and is a very rich deployment. So technically, how does this work, right? So in all these cases, Iris Kudo really runs as an iframe. So it's its own little website within a bigger website. And the main, the hosting application communicates, right? You can add your own user interface, and then we can send commands between the two, or and we'll send back events, right? So that's a way for you to customize it without ever being inside Iris Kudo. It's basically taken as sort of a package. But that's not the only way you can customize things, right? We also provide you with a server-side API that allows you to bring custom features into Iris Kudo, similar to how you would add a custom feature in a desktop CAD system today, right? You write a new command, you write a new widget, right? And to make that easier, we are adding an API we call the Trinity C++ API, and we call it Trinity because it allows you to write code that runs both on desktop, mobile, and cloud, right? And that's actually a technology we use internally a lot for building all the new features, so that we build them once and they run everywhere. So it's composed of the classic CAD API, but it also has its own UI language that we use so that you can bring those UIs in a native way, so a native iOS widgets, native Android, native desktop, and then web UIs. And it is flexible, it's expressive, it has all the widgets you would need. And then we also have the build, we've also added a network access manager, so that because we're finding more and more of these capabilities actually are not just pure features that are CAD, but they're actually CAD with some component that's running on some kind of service, right? An example would be our commenting service, right? It has a rich native UI, but actually talks to a backend, right? That's why we found it to be useful. And this is like one of the main ways our partners customize features within the CAD system itself. All this is to some degree familiar, but some degree new. And so we've actually invested quite a lot of time in building a rich documentation system around this, right? Whether this is around customization of the style of how you would bring your own features into Iris Kudo, but also how do you host, deploy this, and run this, right? And so this is something we're continuously working on. And as soon as we are sort of enter partnering, you'll get access to this as well as a team, and we're constantly expanding this. Which actually brings me to how do you actually develop? And so one way we make that easy is we develop, we ship you something called the Iris Kudo Developer Studio, which is really your own local deployment of Iris Kudo, but running on your desktop. And in a way, you're kind of developing now as you would on desktop CAD, but you happen to be looking at a web view. And we find that is a great way for partners to really make a lot of progress quickly, developing new features within Iris Kudo. Let's go to deployment, right? So I would say the classic ways, Iris Kudo is a web service, right? And that's how it's run. And this is the sort of the SaaS option. But we realize a lot of our partners have very different needs here. And so we want to give you choice in this matter. And so we have the SaaS offering. So here you don't have to run anything. We'll just give you an API key and you can run Iris Kudo within your service. Second, we can rent dedicated capacity, which we call the Iris Kudo server model, where you could pick a t-shirt size model server and we'll just deliver that capacity to you. You can also run this on-premise. We have certain clients that have, due to data residency and other concerns, want to run this on-premise. So we'll give you a way to run that locally. But we can also help you deploy this in your own public cloud environments, right? If you already have a deployment in AWS or Azure, we'll help you deploy Iris Kudo into your own environment. Locally, you can also run it locally. As I said, the Iris Kudo developer experience is a way to do that. And we give you choice on the operating system, right? We recommend you run this on a Linux environment, but you can also run it in a Windows environment due to whatever requirements you might have. Maybe you have an on-premise system that already is Windows heavy in Windows. You can run this on Windows as well, right? Business models. Here we basically have the two primary ways we sell this is either as an OEM, right? In that case, we will come up with a business model that's typically user-based, whether that is, but it really depends on what your business model as a partner is, and we'll try to adapt. But typically, it's some kind of revenue share model that's based on users. The second is the Iris Kudo model, which is much simpler. We use that a lot with sort of early partners that maybe don't have an established business model yet or are sort of very beginning of their journey. And so there you can rent at a fixed price capacity, and we don't worry about how many users you have. We just make sure you can deliver the experience you want, right? And then finally, we have the Iris Partner Solution, which is a way that where you say, well, I don't actually want to integrate this directly in my application, but I think this is complementary to what I'm doing. In this case, we offer the Iris Partner Solution agreement, where you can bundle a Greyboard product, Iris Commander, Iris Kudo, Iris Search, together with your solution, and you can distribute that to your customers to work together. And so that's a really high level, a quick overview of what Iris Kudo does for developers. Martin, did you have any thoughts or comments on what I've seen here?
Yeah, I've written a few questions down as I went along. So obviously it's a server-based product. So what's the situation with local presence? So some people need to have their data in the EU, some people need to have it in the States. I believe Saudi Arabia has different arrangements. What can you offer developers there?
If you look at the SaaS option, right, the way, and then we'll actually have a great example in a second in a case study, is we are actually trying to give the user the closest deployment that we have to them, so they just get a better experience, right? But that's sort of the default, right? For the Iris Kudo server plan, you can choose which region we should deploy that to. So we use AWS as our hosting partner here. And if the customer says, I would like that to be deployed in the Japan region or in the US or Europe, that's what we do. And then we never leave that region. The other really important piece is that the Iris Kudo service does not really hold the data, right? At the beginning of whenever you initiate a session with Iris Kudo, we grab the data from whatever the backend is that we should be talking to. We'll process it, and then you'll see the results, or we send back the results. And so there's no real data residency issue per se.
Okay. And obviously you have this kind of OEM cost per user, you have a cost per server, irrespective of capacity. Obviously, a lot of firms I've seen when it comes to offering cloud services, they talk to a tokenized system where the sky's the limit based on usage. So is there any plans for that type of model, or is it really going to be just you pay one fixed fee for the server irrespective of usage?
Yeah, so we're playing around with this. I have to say we are exploring some of these questions. I think one of the things we'll talk about next is our new Iris online drawings service, and there it could actually be much more interesting to kind of go with a token service. But to be honest, we're currently in consultation with partners and customers to say what is the best model that makes sense here, right? Of course, there is a cost associated by usage, right? But at the same time, a lot of our partners actually have a user-based pricing model. And so at some point, somebody has to make that translation somewhere, right? And so it's an ongoing conversation, I would say, but we're more than happy to have that conversation to figure out what makes most sense for the partner.
Final question sort of about there's a lot of old code out there for old versions of Lisp or old versions of CAD systems that use Lisp. How easy is it to port that old code over to a modern framework, or have you discovered that there's kind of some work that needs to be done for developers?
Well, it all depends. It's a conversation. And so with Lisp, if it pretty much runs out of the box. We have placed some limitations on Lisp just to make sure you stay within sort of the sandbox of what is available. But if you have a Lisp function that interacts with the drawing, tries to collect data or process data, or wants to show up a DCL dialog, all that works out of the box, right? We even recently expanded this. If you're deploying your server on a Windows host, you could even get the VL COM functions working. And so we're ready to have that conversation with the partner if they want to explore a certain direction. We'll help them. On the C++ side, it's the same API, right? But it's still a lot of code was written with sort of Windows sort of platform as the main assumption. And so then it's a conversation. Does it make sense to rebuild that user interface? Does it make sense to simplify the user interface? Does it make sense to turn it into a feature that doesn't actually have a user interface, but then you drive it from your own web UI, right? And we are finding that we can have those conversations with our partners, and we have demo examples for all of this. Whether it's worth it is sort of a individual discussion.
One last question about so there's the potential of the ARM version of Windows coming, or do you bypass that whole issue by being in the cloud, or you obviously do the desktop version as well? So have you got plans to support Windows ARM, or is it really going to be sort of emulation, or is it going to be on the browser?
So, whatever the client is using, right, or the user is using, whether it's a Windows or Mac or Linux desktop, right, that's really up to them. Whether it's ARM or x86, it's really irrelevant to us, right? That's really down to the browser manufacturer. On the server side, the majority of all servers are still running Intel compatible servers, but we already support ARM64 for some of our partners already. So if a partner wants to deploy an ARM64 server because they're cheaper or get a better price per watt or whatever the dimension they care about, we're more than happy to support them there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so let's jump into the first case study. And so, I actually forgot this slide. So one more thing. If this sounds interesting to you, please reach out to us. We're going to do a quick individual presentation with you, sign an NDA. We'll give you access to the developer studio. You get access to the documentation with all the examples and the SDK. And you can start working with our team right away, right? And our philosophy here is you really only start paying once you're able to actually generate money with this, right? So once you're able to release and deploy the solution, then we'll start, talking, making sure the commercial relationship makes sense. But beforehand, it's all about getting you to the point where you can actually sell this, right? So, as I mentioned, there's a case study.